Today I will be presenting the session on getting started with the Sitecore Content SDK. Before we move into the section, a quick introduction about myself. Myself, Chandrakant Gunda. Currently, I'm working as an architect at Persistent Systems. Overall, I have 9+ years of experience in Sitecore, and this was my first year pursuing my MVP, Sitecore Technology MVP, and I was XM Cloud and CDP certified, and primarily my expertise was in upgrade projects. I had the experience of upgrading from different CMS to Sitecore, lower version of Sitecore to higher version, from MVC to SXA and MVC to headless, XP to XM and XM to XM Cloud. So I have worked on all the versions starting from 7 to 10.3, and currently I'm working on Sitecore AI. And yeah, I run a blog site where I share some information about Sitecore. You can check the blog site as well, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. Yeah, this is a quick introduction about me. Let's go to the topic. So today we will be getting started with Content SDK. So we will cover a quick introduction about Content SDK, and we'll understand why this strategic shift from Sitecore JSS to Content SDK, and then we will be moving into what are the different improvements that are introduced in Content SDK when compared with Sitecore JSS. Then we will be going to create a first Content SDK project. Then we'll see how to connect that project with the Sitecore AI. Then we will see what are the high level architectural differences between Sitecore Content SDK and Sitecore JSS. And then we'll arrive at a conclusion, or we'll have a better picture why this strategic shift from Sitecore JSS to Content SDK has happened. So before we move further, as everyone might be aware that currently the support for the current version of JSS, that is 22.x, that support ends in June 2026, and JSS 23.x does not support Sitecore AI, or Sitecore, formerly it is known as Sitecore XM Cloud. So for the clients who are on currently on Sitecore AI, like Content SDK, upgrading to Content SDK is no longer optional. It is the must that they need to upgrade to Content SDK. So that is the driver for us to start exploring Content SDK and start migrating our applications from JSS to Content SDK. And so yeah, as we move to Content SDK, we need to understand why this strategic shift. Sitecore has been developing JSS since multiple years now, and why they suddenly changed from JSS to Content SDK. So Content SDK is a framework that is exclusively for Sitecore AI, and it is based on whatever the feedback that is gathered for JSS, improving those feedbacks. And it is also very lightweight, and it is framework agnostic, the same methods applicable for all the Next.js or AngularJS based frameworks. And it's also, we can say, there are high new features that are introduced. So when we compare the JSS with the Content SDK, is that JSS is nothing but a kind of a generalist. It's the same framework that is used for XP site, Sitecore XP, Sitecore XM, and headless. So it does all the purposes, but it is not optimized for anything. But Content SDK is exclusively built for XM Cloud, and it is optimized for XM Cloud. Overall, the core concept of headless remains in Content SDK, but what happened is that whatever the junk or whatever the things that are not relevant to XM Cloud have been removed in Content SDK. So that makes what that overall the node module size or the bundle size has been reduced by 49%, and we have like our 81% fewer files, and we have 39% less code. So because of this, we have less code, the build would be faster, and the content delivery would be optimized. So that is the strategic reason why Sitecore moved from JSS to content SDK. And also, on the top of this, there are many things that Sitecore content SDK additionally provides. So as a part of the cleanup, content SDK had completely removed the support for experience editor, because page editor is supported in Sitecore AI. So all the methods that are related to experience editor are removed. So content SDK no longer supports Chrome based editing. It only supports metadata based editing. And also, content SDK is aligned with the modern development frameworks like Next.js app router. It supports Next.js app router, and also it supports the React server components, and it also supports the partial pre-rendering. So based on that feedback, so Sitecore has introduced the modern features in content SDK. And also, content SDK is focused on increasing the developer productivity by creating a framework that is AI first, and that has kind of a clear life cycle and support path. Previously, we don't know when the next version of JSS will come or how long the support would be maintained. But with Content SDK, Sitecore has clearly provided a life cycle and a support path. So Content SDK is kind of AI first approach, the framework that is kind of first. Uh, it is based on AI first approach. It contains the instructions for GitHub Copilot, Claude, and Cursor, and also any search engines. It provides clear indications how this framework should be used. Yeah, so this is the strategic reason why Sitecore is asking the Sitecore AI clients to move from Content SDK, sorry, JSS to Content SDK. Yeah. So when coming to the what are the different improvements that are made in Content SDK when compared to Sitecore JSS, there is a unified Sitecore client that is introduced. In JSS, we had a clumsy services like we need to use REST or GraphQL. Even on the GraphQL, there is a different service for layout. There is a different service for robots, sitemaps. There was a different service, and error handling. There was a different service like that. It was very clumsy, but in Sitecore Content SDK, a single Sitecore client that performs all the actions. Then there is Sitecore tools is introduced. It is a new CLI that is introduced in Sitecore CLI. In JSS, we had some things in configuration, something in scripting, something we had to write custom logic. Like everything is kind of cluttered, but in Content SDK, a Sitecore tools CLI has been introduced that that eases the processes. And we have all the config is completely moved into two files, Sitecore CLI.config and Sitecore.config, rather than having multiple files, configuration distributed across multiple files. And also, as we talked about modern development, Sitecore SDK has introduced or support for app router as well. And also, Content SDK supports Design Studio. Even this was supported in JSS 22.10 as well. That is being uh, supported in Content SDK as well. And in Content SDK, middleware is completely rebuilt. In JSS middleware, we don't have control on order of the middlewares, or if I wanted to introduce a new middleware, we had to specify order. Sometimes we had to give the negative values of the order, and there was lot of confusion which middleware is calling which will first, which middleware was calling second. But there is a concept called define middleware that is introduced, which will take care of all the middlewares. it provides an easy way to introduce a custom middleware, and also it provides an easy way before to order the which middleware should be called first, like that. Yeah. So before we move further, anyone has any questions?
Hey, hi Chandrakant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So recently, we face one issue actually regarding this. So we have applications, okay, that still on the Sitecore JSS, okay, but since
Okay.
we migrate from XM to the XM cloud from Sitecore JSS to, but just a few months back, like Sitecore has said like means we don't have the page editor support, okay, and because of that we shifted to the plan for shift to the Sitecore Content SDK. So my question is like, will we move from XP to XM Cloud? Okay, we had just lift and shift as of now, but still that because of the component is not what we can say page editor support, okay, since we try to move it to the supportive. So my question is like, can Sitecore Content SDK, if we move to from like Sitecore JSS to the Content SDK, will it be support that page editor?
Yes, it supports based on the meta editing mode.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So for any Sitecore AI projects that are starting or that are existing, it is recommended to move Content SDK. Content SDK is created to better work with Sitecore AI. So any feature should be possible with Sitecore Content SDK. Yeah. So before we move further, if I want to create a content SDK project in my machine, first we need to have access to Sitecore AI instance. Then we need to have the Node.js, latest version of Node.js that has the long-term support, and we need to install this content SDK CLI. We need to install this globally. This will work only if we have the latest version of Node.js. Yeah. Now that we understood what are the prerequisites for uh, a content SDK project, let's try creating the content SDK project. So to create a content SDK project, there are multiple ways. Simply, I can run the command npx create content SDK app at the rate latest. The current latest version of content SDK is 1.4.1. If I'm not comfortable with 1.4.1, I can give the previous version as well. And while we try to create, it will ask which template we would like to create, like Next.js or what are the different frameworks. So if I don't want to select the option, uh, I want to go as a single command, I can just give space separated by the template name, and then it will ask if it is SSR or SSG. It will also ask if we need a page router based content SDK app or app router based SDK app. So based on that selection, so we can create the content SDK app. So we can run a single command using all the options, or we can run a command and select the options during the prompt. Uh, yeah, I try to create a project in my VS Code. Uh, as creating a new project would take some time, I already created the project. We can see I run the command npx create content SDK at the rate latest. It asked me the template is I have chosen the app router. Uh, if I want to use page router, just I need to select the Next.js. I created the app name as Pittsburgh user group, and I I don't want to pre-render as Sitecore sites are dynamic sites. I used SSR instead of SSG, and once these options are given, it creates the content SDK project. I can see the content SDK projects created. Let me open that folder. Yeah, now that we are able to create the first content SDK project, let's try to examine the folder structure. The first thing that surprises or that comes to us is when compared to JSS is that content SDK is built considering the AI first. We can see that it has instructions for the cursor agents, it has the instructions for Claude, it has instructions for Copilot, it has the instructions for LLMS .txt as well. Let's try to see any one of those instructions. Those will give us understanding about the complete folder structure. So if I see this one, it says that this the key technologies are Next.js and Content SDK, and also we need to use the TypeScript standards, and it also gives the naming conventions that any variable should be camel case, any constant should be upper snake case, and interface should be parcel case, and it gives the instruction about the folders. This is the app router pages and layouts, and components are stored in the components folder, and any types can be under the types folder, and if I want to create any hooks, and it also gives the information about how to use the Sitecore client. So Sitecore client should be imported from mm, sorry, yeah, Sitecore client should be imported from this namespace, and we need to initialize the client, and it also gives the information how to use the fields, different types of fields. So it gives the complete information. If I want to get a page, directly initialize the client and use the method client dot get page. Like that, it gives the complete instructions. If I am integrating my IDE with Claude, it directly understands about my folder, my project, and it gives me the intelligence, or it whatever the code updates by following this instruction. Similarly, it has instructions for Copilot, it has instructions for cursor. In cursor, like it has divided into setup, and what are the general rules, and what are the JavaScript rules, and what are the site core specific rules. It has divided. So this is the differentiator when compared to JSS. Everyone must have experienced in JSS, even though when we used Copilot, the intelligence or whatever the code it was generating was not working, or it's not as per the JSS standards. But now that we are giving the agent instructions beforehand, it is better expected to provide all the AI tools would are expected to provide the better results. Now that we understood how to create the project, let's see how do I connect my project to the Sitecore AI instance. I already have, I mean, out of the box gives the different environment variables. We need to just update certain environment variables like site name, context ID, next context ID. Let me open my Sitecore AI instance deploy app to get the details. Yeah, so these are the parameter I to connect to my Sitecore AI instance. These are the parameters required. Edge context ID. Let me copy this. Edge context ID both is this one, and my site name is your first site, and editing secret. This is used for page editor support. This editing secret is used for the page editor support. So these are the parameters that I require for connecting to my XM Cloud or Sitecore AI project. Let me rename that so that it considers that. So using these parameters, I can connect my Sitecore Content SDK project to Sitecore AI instance. So overall, the complete configurations are done in these two files, cli.config and config.ts. So Sitecore config based on the environment variables using the define config. All the all the variables that are required to connect with my Sitecore AI are initialized using the define config. An example can be found here. I need the edge context ID. It will be reading from the Sitecore edge context environment variable. Similarly, it needs default site. It reads from the environment variable. Default language. It reads from the environment variable. If environment variable is not specified, it takes consider the English. Editing secret, it takes from the uh, environment variable. Now that I already supplied these environment variables, these are already passed as an initialization parameters using the define config. This is completely new, that is not there in Sitecore XM or JSS. Similarly, Sitecore CLI.config is there. So this config file is responsible for different build CLI. This config file is used for the different CLI content SDK CLI commands. Basically, it generates kind of metadata, sites, extract files, and import map. We'll discuss more about exactly what is this generates metadata, generate sites. We can see that there is a folder called .sitecore here, like component map dot client import map. So what is the purpose of this is that in JSS there was a magic that any component under components folder would be automatically included in the build. But in content SDK, the component should be mapped, explicitly mapped. Only the components that are mapped explicitly are included in the build. As we are using app router, there are two types of components. One are server components and some are client components. So client components are mapped in the map.client.ts, and server components are in the component hyphen map.ts. So as we need to generate, as there is a chance that we might forget updating this components map, Sitecore has introduced that in the Sitecore sort CLI.config, where we can update the component map by setting here. We can include what are the items that are included in the paths, like source slash component should be included in the component map, and these are the these fold items under this folder should be excluded. We can write custom rules to meet our requirement as well. How does, we are only mentioning about component map, but how does content SDK map to a client and server component? Is that based on the component definition? If we look at the uh, build your own code, we can see that use client. If any component has use client, it is mapped to the component map client.ts. If any component has doesn't have that use client, it is mapped to the component map, what you call component map dot ts. uh, Before we move further, anyone has any questions on the folder structure and what is the purpose of the CLI config.ts and Sitecore config.ts?
Yeah, Chandrakant, one question I have. So,
Yeah.
using that command, which you initially mentions in the script, okay. So,
Mhm.
is there anything, any prerequisites we need to do from the XM Cloud side, or I mean to say, like, suppose if in case you open the Visual Studio and you just hit that command, so will it ask for any authentications, or it just you need to go the detail sections and just copy that SDK
Yeah,
uh,
only
API and all?
these details are required. So
Okay.
currently I created this project. Let's try running this one.
So while creating this, I don't need anything to authenticate in my XM Cloud, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Cool.
Yeah. So if I'm npm run dev, we can see that it runs this command sitecore tool generate map sitecore tools build, and these are the different commands that it is running in the backend, and these commands are responsible. So currently we only have 4 files here, but at the end, as there are other steps as well, like it gets the site information as well, it gets the uh, metadata information as well. We after this build is run, we should be able to see the sites information as well as the metadata information under the .sitecore folder. Yeah, it might take some time to run, but meanwhile, let's see what are the different. Uh, we saw that how to create the project. We to connect with the Sitecore AI, we need only these properties: edge context ID and the default site name and the editing secret. Based on this, we should be able to connect with the Sitecore AI instance. Yeah, to set up only the front end instance, we don't need actually access to the Sitecore. But if I want to have my local Sitecore running, then I need the access to the Sitecore AI instance. So we have this Sitecore tools. Is this Sitecore tools is a CLI content SDK CLI. We have this build command that takes care of building the project. While building, by default, it takes this config Sitecore Sitecore CLI dot uh, config. But if I want to create my custom config, I'm free to create my custom config like custom.sitecore.cli.config, where I can write my custom logic for the for the build, and I can use supply that as an option, like while building, use this configuration from this config file. And similarly, I have a command to um, scaffold or create a new component as well. Like component scaffold is a command that creates the new command. Similarly, I have the option to scaffold or create a new component based on my template. We'll see how this works in bit more. Similarly, this is a new feature that is introduced, that from the design library, if I wanted to import the component into my VS Code, I can use this command that requires an authorization token that is generated by creating an automation client in the Sitecore deploy app. So this is completely new feature. But for now, we can focus on this 4 commands. So yeah, it started the build. Yeah, we can see that sites.json is generated. Like I only have one site, so it generated one site. But if I have multiple site, all the sites information would be used cd would be available here, and multi-site would work based on the host name configured. Similarly, we can see the metadata JSON that is available here, like all the content SDK related packages based on the latest version would be updated here. The purpose of this import map is to facilitate code generation in the design library. Maybe at the end we'll discuss how this code generation for the design library works. Yeah, and the purpose of this component mapping is that um, it would be used by the uh, so yeah, now I am able to run the application, and my application is running on localhost 3000. Currently I might get kind of a error because I don't have any anything that is on the site, I mean component names or anything that doesn't match anything. Meanwhile, let's discuss more about the custom config. I created a custom config here, CLI config. This is the starter kit project available that is called product leasing, that has kind of multiple components. If you look at the what are the customizations that I can create are like, while scaffolding, I can create my own template. Like I don't want to rely on whatever the template that Sitecore is generating. Uh, I want to have my own template. So I will use this template name is my template, and currently this is sample one. This is main component that would be there in that component that is created. But if you want to create write some code, that can be written here. Similarly, similarly, I don't want to add the import map. I can remove the command from the during the build. Like that, I can uh, customize the config, the CLI.config to meet my requirement. Yeah, it might take some time. So that is the purpose of the custom .sitecore.cli.config. While this is coming up, let's try to understand the structural, how it is structured, or how the page lifecycle is. So in JSS, we have page-based routing, where we used to have here pages, and inside the pages we used to have path.tsx. But in app, this is app routing example. So we'll have app site and then locale. Then we'll have the not path.tsx. It would be page.tsx, and yeah, in the page first, the request will go to the layout.tsx. In the layout.tsx, we'll have a code that mentions that if it's a design library, skip it, and if it is not the library, we'll have the options for uh, placeholder. So in app router, we need to use app placeholder. So we can see that there is a placeholder for header, there is a placeholder for main, and there is a placeholder for footer. Like that, we can add as many placeholders as per requirement. And this placeholder expects these four parameters. One is page, component map, name, and rendering. Page, this page is coming from the what you call uh, path page.tsx to this. We'll see how the page would be coming. Component map is the map that is generated during the build. So all the components that are generated from the component map would be used here, and rendering is route. If I go back to the page.tsx, here how the page would be coming is that, so there are three different things. If it is a design library, we will call the get the page information from the get design library data. If it is a preview mode, we will get from the get preview method. If it is a public facing site, then we will get it from the method. This client is nothing but the unified client that I have mentioned, that is coming from the uh, uh, client Sitecore Content SDK. In that, we use this client.get page. It expects the parameters like path, site, and locale. And we have this fetch options. We can configure the fetch options as well to meet our requirements, like how many retries that needs to be done, and what could be the timeout that I need to configure. I can configure my fetch options. So this will get the page. And to get the component details, I need to call this method get component data along with the page dot layout. So it will get the component props. So from here, it will call the layout by passing the page object that it is getting from the page client.get page. So this is nothing but the layout service response for the what you call layout service response for the current route. It will get the complete JSON. From this, it will get the components and it will pass the pages uh, into that layout. There, the placeholders are defined, and then the each component is rendered. So, what is the difference between the client components and server components? Are if the component if any component relies on state or it uses components like use effect, then those should be in uh, we should have use client and those should be in the map.client. If component is not using the any states or use effect, we can use the uh, server components that is can be mapped in the component map.ts. There could be some cases that some component can have both client and server logic, that is universal. In that case, we need to register both in map.client and map.ts. So in that way, this is from the layout it gets the layout.tsx will have the placeholder and what are the components that are mapped to the placeholder would be rendered here. Similarly, yeah, this placeholder would be rendered and this placeholder would be rendered. So overall, uh, of everything, so inside the providers we'll have the client components like here we can see the components is coming from components.map.client, and inside the placeholders we are passing the server side components. So this is server side logic, and outside is the kind of client side logic. Let's see if this site has come up. Yeah, it got this error because I don't have any mapping from the front end side to the component side core. Let me try to run the let me stop this and try to run this project. Yeah, so this project has kind of multiple components from the starter kit, that is product listing. We have components like accordion, banner, breadcrumbs, like that. We have kind of multiple components, and some components have kind of variants as well. So here we can see that each variant is also distributed into a different file. Yeah, while this is running, let's try to discuss something about the middleware. Like in JSS previously we used to have uh, like under the lib folder we used to have multiple middleware files, one for the redirect, one for the personalized, one for multi-site, like that. We used to have multiple redirects, but here we only have a single middleware file where everything is passed through a utility called define middleware. In the If I want to have one custom middleware, I can simply write a class extending the middleware, and inside that I'll call the define middleware, including that additional local. So by default, multi-site redirects and personalized will be there. I want to So this is the order in which it is getting executed, like local middleware, multi-site middleware, redirects middleware, and personalized middleware. If I want to disable any of the middleware, those can be configured in the Sitecore config.ts as well. Like if I want to disable the redirects, that can be disabled from here. Similarly, if I want to uh, disable the local middleware. So currently the path is app slash site slash local. So we need to adjust the path such that this local is not there, and then we'll move to the move up, and the local in the default in the middleware.ts we no need to pass this local parameter. Similarly, if I want to disable the multi-site middleware, uh, in the layout.tsx or in the path.tsx, wherever we are relying on, wherever we are passing the site parameter for the unified Sitecore client, wherever we are passing the site parameter, we no need to pass this site parameter. In when we don't pass the site parameter, the default site that is mentioned, the based on the site name, that would be considered. Yeah, and while this is running, if I want to enable debug mode similar to Sitecore JSS, we have the option to enable the debug logs by setting an environment variable. If I want to debug everything, I can use content SDK colon star. If I want to debug only certain layout responses, content SDK layout. If I want to debug personalized or any specific thing, then I can do that namespaces as well. Currently I have set up to debug everything, so that is expected to show all the responses. Let's see. Yeah, while this is running, anyone has any questions?
Mm.
Okay, I take this as no. uh, it might take some more time to run this. Meanwhile, I'll let me showcase the design library concept as well. So basically we have this file called import import map. So what is the purpose of this import map? Is used it used to generate the code generation in the design library. So if I go to the design library and see the components, suppose promo component, we can see both the design as well as the code here. So why, to have this code enabled, we need to have that import map uh, to move that I mean, whenever AI based changes are made in the design library using the existing code, the code will also get updated, which we can use this code again back in the VS code for any kind of experimentation, like if any designer wants to make any changes on the fly in the design library. This gives the relevant content SDK code update. So initially it will have whatever the code is there here, that for that component will be there. We can select which site is that, and we can also select which variant is that. So to facilitate that code generation, these import maps are used. If I want to disable that code generation completely, I can disable from the uh, config where by adding this attribute disable code generation true. Yeah. So, and if there is any new component is added using the design library, and if I wanted to create that component in my VS code, I need to use this command, that is uh, component add and component id, then followed by the authorization token that is generated using the automation client. So that is the purpose of this command. Yeah, now my build is successful. Let's see how it is running. We can see the response as well, like everything is logged. I have enabled the debug logs. We can see that. So this is the request that is going, a layout service request. It is going, it is passing the parameters as your first site, like that. It skipped the middlewares like personalized middleware because I have not configured it. Redirects middleware also, it passed the local middleware first, then the redirects middleware, like that. Yeah, as part of uh, app router based support, even this sitemap requests, robust request, everything are moved into kind of an uh,
Hey, Chandrakant.
different methods are provided to get. Hello.
Hey, Bala here. There is a question in the chat, man, if you can.
Okay. Uh, Product owner not able, could this be leveraged to generate? Can you elaborate the question? Is it related to design library?
No, just kind of the use overall. One of the blockers we have right now in creating temporary environments for testing, very focused changes is that it's so hard to set up Sitecore fully in an environment. So I wasn't sure with this type of automation if it would enable that sort of environment creation, temporary environment setup and deployment of the change for QA purposes, and then, can be cleaned up or removed once things are merged into our main branch. But, and again, apologies if this is like an offshoot, weird, strange question. I just was seeing how all of this is so automated and thinking about how that could be beneficial for our group in the future.
Yeah. So this is a this is not going to automate any process. It is just that going to ease the life of developers, or it is going to reduce the time to create a new component or try to create a new feature or try to build a new website. It might reduce the time significantly, but it may not completely automate the full processes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, now our site is running. So basically, if I try to console.log what is the information I'm getting from, yeah, it's already there. Yeah, so this is the complete page data where we have the complete layout information. Inside that we'll have the route, and inside that we have the placeholders. And based on this placeholder names that are defined in the layout, it's going to get rendered on the page. Yeah, so if someone wants to know the complete flow from the page using the Sitecore unified client, we'll call the get page parameter using the site and locale parameters. We will and the route params will get the page information, and that page information is passed into both uh, providers as well as the placeholders. So the client side components would be rendered at the providers, and the server side would be using the app placeholder. And if someone wants to know exactly from the component perspective what has changed, like if we want to compare any component from JSS to content SDK, the changes would be that first thing is that instead of importing from Sitecore JSS slash Next.js, we would be inheriting from content SDK slash Next.js. And instead of using JSS link, we would be using content SDK link. Instead of using JSS rich text, we will be using content SDK rich text. Like that, all the methods would be updated to match the content SDK related methods. Overall, the TypeScript and overall the high level syntax that would remain same, just the references from JSS SDK would be updated to the content SDK thing. Yeah, that is pretty much which I wanted to cover. So overall, if wanted to simplify exactly whatever we have covered here, is that uh, like we basically content SDK is nothing but the lighter version of uh, JSS with by removing all the unwanted necessary and by introducing a, kind of a AI first approach and unified reducing the confusion using the unified client API and improving the build and delivery time using centralized configuration.